morning, good evening, good afternoon, gamers. Thank you for subscribing to DogHaver21. If you haven't, please do. Channel hasn't been around long enough to look at the analytics for who hasn't subscribed, but I'm sure if you haven't subscribed, uh, then that means you're mean. You're gonna make me cry. But anyhow, we're gonna go over the history of the Saiga 12. A very prolific firearm, just as all the firearms we've gone over so far. So, Saiga 12 obviously has some roots going back, probably far as back as the VSS Venturas, as I covered earlier with the Mongols. So the Saiga 12 was like a side project of the Mongols, or developed around 1200 AD, and it was all right. It was using a gas system again because black powder doesn't really work well in gas systems. It usually jammed very quickly. So by the time the Russians got around to it, Imperial Russia got around to it, it was again kind of like a scrap side project of like some of the other weapons they picked up from the Mongols from that time period. So the Saiga 12, it kind of gets put on the back burner up until World War One. World War One comes around, and there's a lot of these old Mongol side projects that the Russian Empire picks up to try to experiment on, and right before the war as well. In fact, in 1912, the Russians implemented smokeless powder into the Saiga 12, and they realized, hey, this works better than we thought. This gas system can actually run effectively when using the right type of ammunition. So in 1912, they developed this firearm, or fully developed this firearm with smokeless powder, and implemented it into special forces troops. So the Saiga 12 gets put on the front line with some of the more dedicated soldiers. It's not going to be put up with the conscripts, because the conscripts are just gonna, they're just gonna waste the weapon. So they get put up with the special forces. But 1914 rolls around, and the war begins. Eventually, the Germans get around to invading Russia. They start marching into Russia. And if you didn't know, the Eastern Front is very different than the Western Front when it comes to World War One. There weren't as many trenches. Obviously, trenches played a big role. Artillery still played a big role, but there's a lot more open field combat, so shotguns weren't as effective as they were on the Western Front. So what ended up happening is the Germans, they killed a lot of these like frontline Russian soldiers, and they picked up Saiga 12s, and it got into some German arsenals, which wouldn't really matter for a while. So effectively, the Russians abandoned the project again because they just didn't see it as something that was going to be effective long term, because of their experience in World War One and early years of World War One. So they kind of forgot about it for a long time. But the Germans, they had some interest because of their experience on the Western Front with the American guns, the American 1897 trench shotguns. So they decided to take a look at the Saiga 12, which is just abbreviated for the Saiga model of 1812, updated with the smokeless powder, of course. So the Germans, they actually put some development into this, and they took a look at it, but then after the war, they had to scrap a lot of their military projects because of the Treaty of Versailles, restricted a lot of their access to developing military firearms. And the Saiga 12 was kind of it was kind of a secret project for the Germans, and they had much bigger things to tackle, like creating new tanks, creating new machine guns, especially that needed to be created and named in a way that wouldn't violate the Treaty of Versailles. So the Saiga 12 again put on the back burner. However, as we've seen many times in history, a lot of these old guns, old projects, get brought up in times of desperation. especially around 1945, in backline service with the Wehrmacht and the like the kids and the old people that they conscripted to kind of to fight for the Wehrmacht at that time period when the Americans and the Russians were getting closer to Berlin. So the Saiga 12 has some effective use there, but the real significance that it had was that the Russians saw that, or the Soviets at that time, saw that this old gun that had been an abandoned project had been used to some effect by the Germans, so they decided that they wanted to pick it back up. They wanted to see if they could do something with it. So, Nikolai Kalashnikov, who won the submachine gun trials for the USSR, adopting the AK-47, took a look at this design, and some may speculate that he took some inspiration from it with the gas system. And you know, post World War II, they start experimenting with this gun again, and it's just they don't really have a reason to use it because they have the AK and because they have the SKS. They don't really need anything that fits the niche role of a semi-automatic or a fully automatic magazine-fed shotgun. Until the development of the KS-23, which kind of showed that they were in dire need of shotguns because, you know, developing a shotgun based around an aircraft cartridge is kind of a sign of desperation and need of new equipment. So the Russians, again, they postponed this project. It's not very talked about, not super high on their list for things to do until after the fall of the Soviet Union. So after America wins the Cold War, the Soviets, you know, disband, they dismantle. And the new Russian Federation has control of all the old Soviet arsenals, and they get to look at this Saiga 12 again. And the Saiga company, it picks up the Saiga 12 because, you know, the names are very similar, if not the same, and they decide to make little tweaks and improvements and try to sell it on the civilian market as well as sell it to the government, and they have some small contracts. And in America, it's a relatively popular but expensive magazine-fed shotgun to be had. But the primary use for this gun was actually related somewhat to snake control, because in Ireland, during the Troubles, there was an overlooked battle that was going on. There was actually 600,000 snakes, the venomous snakes, that had made it into the country, and they were overlooked because of the Troubles and the fight with England. And the IRA decided to pick up the cause and try to kill some of these snakes because they were very venomous and they were very dangerous. But they didn't have anything fast firing enough or with enough spread to kind of kill these snakes. So they made a deal with the then Soviet Union to purchase a bunch of Saiga 12s from their old arsenals because, you know, the Soviets didn't need it, and there were some lines of communication, mostly through Algeria, Gaddafi, I think. Anyhow, they had some lines of communication with the Soviet Union, and they managed to pick some of these up. And because of the Saiga 12, they were able to dispatch most of these venomous snakes before the media had time to pick up the story on it, because most of the media, again, was focused on the Troubles. So that's how the Saiga 12 has influenced history. As far as the game goes, it's a well-rounded shotgun, high recoil. You definitely need attachments on it if you want it to be effective. But otherwise, very good shotgun. Rewards patience, and it also rewards spamming it at close range. Good gun all around. Can definitely recommend it. And I think that's just about the complete history. A lot of Americans who have the money to afford it like it, and the Irish people will forever be indebted to the Saiga 12 for saving them from all those mistakes. So, yeah, that's it's just about it for the history of the Saiga 12. Please subscribe. If I hit 400,000 subscribers by the end of the month, I will end my own life. And I have a Christmas surprise coming up. Yeah, it's gonna be great. 400,000 subscribers by the end of the month, and I'll end my own life.
Give me the Irish Republican Army. Give me the